Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to present our journal titled Mobile Application-Based Phonetic Training Facilities Chinese English Learners Learning of Second Language, written by Yang and colleagues in 2024. This study discusses how mobile applications can help learners improve their pronunciation and listening skills in the second language, especially English. So in this presentation, we will cover up most of the journal, so stay tuned. But before that, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Rizqy Zaini Nurrahman, and my SID are 24511 05011111016.
Hello everyone, my name is Devani Erista and
My name is Maulana Alfatih.
Hello, my name is Dian Septiana Pratiwi and my SID is 245105011111012.
Now I will explain the research questions and gaps that are addressed in the study. As you can see on the left side of the slide, the first research question is: does mobile learning-based high variability phonetic training, or HVVT, transfer from perception to production in second language English learning? In other words, it examines whether improving learners' ability to hear sounds can also improve their ability to pronounce them. Second, can HBVT improve Chinese learners' pronunciation of new or unfamiliar English words, especially they never heard before? Third, how does HBVT influence brain activation and neural connectivity during phonological processing? So basically, this research focusing on exploring the brain of the learners. Now, regarding the research gap, as you can see on the right side of the slide, the first is inconsistent findings on the relationship between phonological perception and production in prior studies. Second, limited evidence on the effectiveness of mobile-based HBVT, especially regarding validity and reliability. Third is lack of studies integrating behavioral outcomes with neuroscientific evidence such as brain imaging. And last, insufficient research on cost-effective alternatives in phonetic training. So basically, in previous studies show inconsistent results about the relationship between perception and production. So there is no clear agreement between them. In addition, although mobile-based learning is increasingly popular, there is limited evidence about the effectiveness and validity based on the mobile-based activity. And another important gap is that most studies focuses only on the behavioral outcomes, while very few combine behavioral outcomes with the neuroscientific evidence such as brain imaging. And finally, traditional phonetic training mostly relies on the human speakers, which is costly. Therefore, there is a lack of research on more practical and cost-effective solutions, such as using synthetic voices. So basically, this research aims to address these gaps by mobile-based learning, behavioral analysis, and brain-based evidence.
So I would like to explain about the literature or key theories. So here's the theory behind HVPT. So HVPT is high variability phonetics training, and have HVPT here works because when a learner hears a lot of different voices, their brain gets better at recognizing sound in a second language, so we don't even need native speaker. So synthetic voices here can do the job just fine, as Wang and Monroe said. And now, the brain side region like superior and middle temporal gyri handle sound perception. So while the fusiform gyrus links letter to sound, but Chinese learners often rely on their first language assimilation, which is make it harder for them to break the words down into smaller phonetic segments, and that's why phonetic is so central here, because it is the actual skill being trained in the paper, and then it is the lens that the researcher used to measure improvement, and then the process that the researcher watching in the brain. So for the methods, we have I would like to explain about the apparatus and design. So what the researcher actually do. So the researcher used the quasi experiment by using a mobile apps and FNIRS brain imaging. So the training run on WeChat with learner practicing for 40 sessions across 8 weeks, and each session have 20 minutes. And then they listen to synthetic British voices and had to distinguish like native from Chinese voices. And for testing, they use the MPST before and after training, focusing on to work with 3 to 5 phonemes. Meanwhile, FNIRs track brain activity across 49 channels while learner process words. So the researcher have two groups. So the first group is 19 in the experimental group, and 21 in the control group. So it is a match for the aptitude, and then again notice how phonetics is at the heart of this design, right? And it is both the content of the training and the focus of the measurement. And I would like to explain about the behavioral effect, or MPST. So here we found that HVPT rely and or really work for longer words in the experimental group. So the scores for 5 phonemes work jump from 0.36 to 0.42, and which was statistically significant compared to the control group. So this research shows that training transfers to new tough words. Short words didn't show much improvement, and they're easier to recognize anyway. And then for authentic words, there was no differences, and the score stays around 0.60 because learners still rely on their first language assimilation strategy. And then so the takeaway is HVPT is most powerful when it pushes learners to analyze phonetics segments, so not when they deal with the family words. And then phonetic here is the bridge. It is what makes training effective and explain why the result look the way they do.
And I'm going to continue in the presentations of my friends, and now I'm going to talk about brain activation's result. So the overall narrative of FNRIS reveals changes in brain activations, namely inhibitions of non-linguistic areas and increased lexical processing. So I have 2 points in this brain activations results. First, the inhibitory right fusiform gyrus. Post-training activations decreased significantly in the experimental group when reading 5 phonemes and pseudo words. This reduces visual or non-linguistic interference from L1 Chinese. Second, enhances LMTG predicts performance. Regressions showed a strong correlation between right MTG BA21 and increased MBSA R square equals 0.21. This area processes higher level phonetics recognitions, so the HVPT returns to native-like networks. Moving to the next, which is functional connectivity. The functional connectivity increased brain connectivity, especially in the LMTG, indicates a more efficient processing networks. First, LMTG connectivity. Pair t-test FDR corrected, t equals 7.02 and 3, with p less than 0.001 between left MTG and other ROIs post HVPT. This supports generalizations of perceptions to new productions. The blue-red FC map colors visualize synchronizations. Second, unchanged control. No significant pre or post differences confirm HVPT triggers network reorganizations. The LMTG is key to intelligibly use. Now, let's discuss about the interpretations. The big lines of this discussion is about the conditional transfer effects. The HVPT aids segment analysis of long pseudo-words via specific neutralization. So I have two divided points, which is transfer effect of long pseudo-words. The HVPT transforms perceptions to new words productions, supported by Wiener 2020. Students apply phonetic patterns from trying to decode difficult words, not for short or native words, due to L1 resistance. And the second is about brain changes. The right fusarium rooms reduces non-linguistics processing, while RMTG increases lexical recognitions. Native-like connectivity, LMTG. This returns L2 mechanism from assimilations to segment decoding.
And now let's discuss the pedagogical implications and the limitations of this study. So first, starting with the implications, this research highlights that mobile-based HVPT is not only convenient but also effective at a neurological level. It helps rebuild brain connectivity between regions used by native speakers and those responsible for assimilation strategies. To make this training even more effective, it suggests that educators incorporate authentic words and meaningful context rather than just pseudo words. This approach helps learners register phonetic patterns more naturally and keeps them engaged throughout the process. However, there are a few limitations to consider. The first is it used more challenging datasets in the post-test to better observe brain function, which might have led to an underestimate of the actual behavior improvement. Second one, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the research only able to use one native speaker for subjective evaluations, which could introduce to some bias. And lastly, while this research focused on synthetic voices and high variability training, future research could compare this result with human voices and low variability methods to further isolate the most effective training components. Okay, now let's move to the conclusion. So, this research demonstrates that mobile application-based high variability phonetic training, or HVPT, has a significant transfer effect on the production of long, complex pseudo words. This means that the training successfully helps learners from just perceiving sounds to actually producing them by analyzing the phonetic segments of new difficult words. On a neurological level, the training led to important changes in brain function. So, It observes an inhibition of the right fusiform gyrus, which suggests a shift away from non-linguistic visual strategies toward a more specialized language decoding system. Furthermore, the research found that participants who showed the most improvement in their test scores also had higher activation in the right middle temporal gyrus. So this highlights the role of this brain region in recognizing voice features and accessing lexical information. In summary, this study proved that low-cost mobile learning tools using synthetic voices are a viable and effective way to rebuild the neural connections necessary for second language acquisition, while the transfer effects is more visible in complex new words. The overall enhancement of brain connectivity marks a significant step forward in L2 pedagogical strategies.